title The Stone and the Storm a narrative. In the ancient city of Corinth, there lived a young stonecutter named Leander. His whole day was spent carving stones that sometimes became walls, sometimes statues, and sometimes part of monuments. Leander was physically strong, but his heart was often burdened. He worried about the future. Would his job last? Will he earn enough for his family? Will fate be kind to him, or will he suffer a major disaster? One day, while Leander was busy with his work, an old philosopher of the city, famous for his wisdom, passed by. He watched Leander work intently, but also felt his worried eyes. The philosopher said gently, "Young man, I see that you work very hard, but your heart is not at peace. Tell me, what is troubling you?" Leander wiped the sweat from his hands and replied, "I fear the future, old sage. I carve this stone every day, but I don't know how long my work will last. I don't know what fate has in store for me. This fear haunts me all the time lest a storm comes, which ruins my hard work." The philosopher smiled and said, "I have to teach you a lesson, which I learned years ago. Life is just like the stone you carve. It is neither good nor bad in itself. It becomes what it is, as you make it. The storm you fear, poverty, loss, failure is not in your control, couldn't deliver." Then the philosopher recited a saying of the masters of relativism: "We are not hurt by the events themselves, but by our thoughts and judgments about those events. All you can do is how you react to them." These words deeply touched Leander's heart, and he set himself to follow these philosophical teachings. He turned his attention away from the uncertainty of the future and focused on the work of each moment. Now he started focusing on how he himself was reacting instead of external factors. At first, this change was difficult for him. He, who was always worried about the coming days, was now learning to pay attention to the events around him. The words of the philosopher made him realize that it is futile to regret the events of the past or to be anxious about the future. He began to adopt a new way of life, one based on living in the present, fulfilling one's responsibilities, and calmly accepting the vicissitudes of fate. After some time, a severe storm came, which swept through the streets of Corinth, causing havoc. The walls of many houses collapsed, some people lost their lifetime earnings, and the city's market was also engulfed. Leander's work was also affected. Many of the stones he had been carving for months broke. But this time he felt no anger or sadness in his heart. He knew that the coming of the storm was not in his control, but he had complete control over how he faced the loss. People noticed that Leander was not like the other citizens who looked distraught and broken-hearted after the storm. He remained calm, and as soon as the storm died down, he began to carve his broken stones again, without complaint. In time, his work became excellent again, and the townspeople came to admire his courage and independence. There were many more storms in Leander's life, but he always faced them with the same fortitude and calmness. Whenever there was a problem in the city, people would come to Leander and seek his advice. They knew that there was something special about him, which distinguished him from others. Leander taught them, "The art of life is what we carve out within ourselves. Difficulties and trials will always come, but what we have control over is our attitude and response." Years later, Leander's name became famous in Corinth as a wise and patient man. Both his work and his teachings lived on. People used to say of him, "Leander is like the stones he used to carve, strong, stable, and molded to his will." After all, Leander had learned that true strength is not to stop the storm, but to stand in it, and that was the real lesson of reciprocity. This story illustrates the basic tenets of empathy. We can only control our own reactions, while external circumstances are beyond our control. We should shape our lives in such a way that difficulties can strengthen us rather than weaken us.